Hello everyone, Alexandra Kostyniuk is here and I welcome you back to the third video of the video course Absolutely Must Know Endgames. And today we're gonna talk about fortresses and hopefully the positions that we're gonna discuss help you to save many of your games. What is a fortress? Let's have a look. Well, actually, I hesitated when preparing this video course to show this particular example as a fortress, but I thought that since this one is so important, I will put it here and we'll call it a fortress. Usually, a fortress is a position where one side has a big material advantage. Well, here we can agree that white has quite a significant material advantage, an extra bishop and a knight, but despite this fact, the other side can hold a draw with accurate moves or with obvious moves, but with some basic knowledge that this position is holdable. The more fortresses, the more such positions you know and aware of, the more chances that you may save some points. If you defend, you might be able to save the game. If you have a big material advantage, you can try to avoid such fortresses and end up in such a situation. So let's go over some basic examples that I think are quite important. As I already mentioned, this position is quite important because it's a draw and there is nothing white can do while the black king stays in the corner. Why? Well, because the problem is that if we try to push this pawn forward, this king just stays in the corner, and it's important to stay in the corner, to stay in front of this pawn. There is no way to improve this position, because if white tries to play king to g6, it's a stalemate. If white tries to move the bishop away and then move the king up, we stay in the corner and there is no way to improve again, because if white plays h7, it's a draw. So trust me, you can save a lot of games by knowing that if your opponent or the stronger side has a bishop and this side pawn, this bishop, in order to win, you need to have side pawn should be heading to the corner of your bishop. Or if this position arises, a white, in order to win, should not let this king get to this corner. Let's get over some more fortresses. This one, it's very similar to the one that we discussed, but I just added a few pawns, and if we remove this pawn on h2, it would be a winning position for black. But unfortunately for black, this pawn stands here and it's a draw. And actually, there are more pawns can be added. You will see some positions in manuals where white pawns stand all the way to d6 and black pawns stand all the way to d7, and it will still be a draw because, well, here, this one is important. You shall not get to the corner, because after king h1, there's going to be a checkmate. That's the only way to lose here. But you rather should stay on g1 and f1. Of course, you cannot leave your pawn all alone on h2. You shall not let black's king get to your pawn. So you just stay on these squares, f1 and g1, and that should be enough to hold a draw, although there are some scary moments, right, like this one. But again, bishop b7 is not a checkmate. You go to g1, and king f2 or king f1 is a stalemate. So this is a draw. This is one of the positions to remember, and if you are trying to save your game, you can get to this fortress and save it. The next one is similar, but with the bishop of the opposite color. Again, here it's a draw as long as this king does not leave the corner. It shall stay in the corner. It shall not go to f1, because then then some problems may start. So the king stays in the corner, and because of the stalemate situations, it's also a draw. Let's move on. Another example, another fortress. Now black has a knight, but it's still a draw as long as the white king stays in the corner. What's important, we see that these draws are possible because of the side pawns and because of the situation that the weaker side king is in the corner. So there are a lot of stalemates possible, and you can play it on, you can try to give a checkmate, but unfortunately as soon as the king comes closer, it's gonna be a stalemate, it's gonna be a draw. Moving on, another fortress, another situation. Pawns have shifted closer to the center, but it's still a draw as long as the white king does not leave the corner. Again, here it's important to stay in the corner, because if we go to g1, king e2, we stay in the corner. As soon as this king approaches, it's gonna be a stalemate. It's because of stalemate those fortresses are fortresses. Let's keep going. Another situation, again draw, because as long as this king is in the corner. This position is a little bit different. It can happen if white plays g6 and leave his bishop on h7. I've seen some practical games like this one, but it's also a fortress, it's also a draw, because black just stays on this squares g7 and h8, and there is no way for white to improve the position, because as soon as the king comes closer, it's a stalemate, it's a draw. And if white tries to sacrifice the bishop by playing bishop to g8, unfortunately it's not enough to win the game, because as we will discuss a little bit later in the series, this position is also a draw. Okay, let's move on. Let's discuss and have a look at some more fortresses, some more examples. Well, these are quite rare. I've seen them mostly in studies, but you may try to remember them, that if black sets up such a position, they can save a game playing against queen, because black's pieces kind of almost set up a barrier, so it's not possible to come closer to the black king with the white king. So the bishop protects f6, f8 and h6 squares, and the knight protects f7 and g6 squares. So they're keeping this fortress as two pieces save the king. Let's move on. And yeah, another interesting position, also quite rare in practice, but it's good to know that sometimes it's possible to save a game with two knights versus a queen. Actually, I don't think I've seen such example in practice, but it's not always a draw. It's a draw if the weaker side has time to set up knights like this and to hold them with the king. And with the same setup, black can draw anywhere in the board. So this endgame is usually drawn, even if the weaker side king is closer to the edge of the board. Good to know. Who knows, maybe once you can save your game by setting up such a fortress with two knights. And if we talk about two bishops also can hold a draw sometimes, but only when they're close to the corner. And it is quite tricky. I must tell you that it's not very obvious. You really need to pay attention to what your opponent is doing, and black can try to get closer to those bishops. I try to make some moves. Here, for example, this position is very, very important, because you need to keep your control over this f5 square. You need to play bishop h7. I believe it's the only move in the position that saves the game. But nevertheless, if you play well, it's a draw and might be useful to know. There are many more fortresses, and actually I think we're going to discuss a few of them in the next videos that you better know, because they're like highlights that can guide you and help you saving your points and your games, let's finish this video with this very known study by Greco, the 18th century. It's white to move and make a draw. White's situation seems to be hopeless. I mean, black has 2 extra pawns and they will start moving up soon. But as I said, it's possible to save the game, and if we pay close attention to what we've learned, black has a light squared bishop, and this promotional square of this side pawn is the wrong color. Thus, white can save the game by giving a check, exchanging the rooks, and the key point of the study, by sacrificing this bishop. And if black takes, yes, they do have 2 pawns, but quantity doesn't always mean quality, as we know. And in this particular case, even if black has, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pawns on the A file, it's still gonna be a draw, because white's king will get to the needed square and will just stay there. And they're gonna be a stalemate sooner or later. If black, after bishop a6, doesn't do anything, just stay and wait, of course white will not retreat the bishop, but will insist on sacrificing it. And again, we have the position that we started with today, and this position is a theoretically drawn position, but you must go to this corner as soon as possible in order not to miss your chance to save the game. So today we've discussed a few fortresses that might be helpful to know, because when you know that this particular situation is theoretically drawn and it's possible to hold, it can help you to save many games or to win some of your games if you avoid those fortresses. The fortress concept is very important in Endgames, and I'm sure we're going to discuss it in further videos in more details, but I believe it's a good start, and good luck in your games, and see you in the next videos.